It's going live right now over Facebook.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started. I know we said we would start at 6 o'clock, so we want to respect and honor everyone's time this evening. And thank you to Trent, a member of the community, who has offered to provide videoing on social media, Facebook, so thank you so much for that. All right. Well, I'm going to share a few words before I hand it over to Brian Thorburn from Southern California Edison. So good evening, everyone. For those of you that are joining us here in the hall and for those of you online, thank you for taking time to attend tonight's community update provided by Southern California Edison. As your county supervisor, I've heard from many of you about some of the frustrations caused by power shutoffs and the ongoing work to improve our electrical infrastructure. I understand how disruptive this can be. However, we've also witnessed the devastating impact of wildfires, both here in our region and across California. Locally, the KMP complex fire and the coffee pot fire caused immense damage to the surrounding areas, threatening nearby homes and our natural landscape. Additionally, the recent fire in Los Angeles serves as another stark reminder of how critical it is to invest in infrastructure upgrades so that it protects people and property. These projects, such as wildlife safety upgrades and vegetation management, are extremely necessary as they are vital to reducing the risk of catastrophic wildfires in our communities. I know this work can feel burdensome, but it is an essential step in safeguarding our community and ensuring the safety of future generations. Amen. Because of the calls, messages, and social media posts I've received, I wanted to ensure that Southern California Edison had the opportunity to communicate this project directly to you and to share how they are helping Three Rivers improve its infrastructure. Tonight's update is a chance to hear firsthand and directly about the improvements being made and the safety measures being implemented as part of this critical work. Transparency, open communication, and regular updates are key to building trust during this process, and that's why I am committed to being that bridge and advocating for your concerns and ensuring that your voices are heard, and then also allowing and giving that opportunity and that space for Southern California Edison to be that partner with us along the way. So if you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to raise them tonight or reach out to me in the future as well. I believe that we can make sure this project strengthens the resilience of our community while addressing the challenges that we face during this project. But again, thank you for being here and for your dedication to the safety and well-being of Three Rivers and Tulare County. And so with that, I'd like to bring up Brian Thorburn for our partner and Southern California Edison engagement this evening.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Thorburn with Southern California Edison, and thank you all for joining us tonight, and thank you for those that are joining us virtually. We'll want to just briefly do a rundown of the agenda of what we're going to cover tonight, and they're back there on the table as you came in. We're first going to cover our wildfire safety upgrades, which is a lot of the work that we've been doing up here and we'll be continuing doing throughout this coming year. We will then touch on vegetation management, which most of you are familiar with. Our crews are out clearing trees and brush from our lines. And then we'll finish with an update from Dan Caroline on our Kuya powerhouse. And we'll take questions along the way. So as questions occur to you, just feel free to ask. First, I want to thank Supervisor Valero for his continued support and the county's ongoing partnership with us. It's crucial to our success, not only serving all of you here in Three Rivers, but really throughout the county. As the supervisor mentioned, certainly all of us have family, friends, colleagues who have been impacted by the LA fires. And all of us here know well the recent fires that have occurred here locally. And all this work that we're doing here and throughout this year, what we've been doing is to make our system that serves Three Rivers here safer and more reliable now and in the future, and that we're doing everything we can to reduce the fire risks here so that we certainly can prevent what we've seen in Pacific Palisades and Altadena. Now, we also want to apologize because we realize that there's hardship when there's outages, and we apologize for the hardship that you've experienced and that you may experience in the coming year with this work. In order for our crews to do these wildfire safety upgrades safely, we have to have planned outages. And so we know there's never a good time for an outage. We know that we're doing everything we can to minimize impacts in terms of scheduling and notifications. Now, if you're not receiving Southern California Edison notifications, we'll start correcting that tonight. A couple of the fact sheets that we have back there have information on how you can sign up for SCE outage alerts and notifications. And then also, when there is a power outage, there's a fact sheet back there that explains how SCE can help you with backup power when the power is out. Because there's two different kinds of outages, as you may know. There's our planned outages where we're going to do planned work, and to do that work we have to do it safely. But then of course there's also unplanned outages. And we had one back in November where we had a bird fly into our transmission line and we lost the power to the entire community up here for about 5 or 6 hours. So we can't, unplanned outages are just that. We can't plan for everything. So there's animal and equipment, there's weather, of course, car hit pole, you know, there's going to be unplanned outages. So what's going on up here, it was one of those quirky things, I guess, that with all the work that's been going on up here with the planned outages, then you throw in an unplanned outage, and you know, certainly a fatigue factor certainly sits in, and we recognize that. So again, all the work that we're doing, have done, and will be doing again throughout this year, is going to get us to a better place in terms of making Three Rivers safer, making our system more reliable so that we're able to provide better service to you all as our customers. And again, I just want to finish, I want to highlight, as you came in, all these fact sheets that are back there. I encourage you to take them before you leave, because there's a lot of good information. Briefly, there's one that speaks about our covered conductor program, which is our wildfire safety work that we're doing, that Ron and Leroy will get into in a minute. So that's a good summary of the wildfire safety program. Again, understanding and preparing for a power outage has a lot of good tips on that. And then critically on the back is how you sign up for our outage notifications online at our website. And then again, the critical care backup battery program, which can provide you backup power in the event of a power outage. So that's good information. And then also a good recap on our vegetation management hazard tree fact sheet on why when our crews are out trimming, what drives that. And then the last one is a stay safe around electricity. So useful tips around there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our project team that's spearheading our wildfire safety upgrades. Leroy Ginther and Ron Maurer. So, gentlemen, take it away.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Leroy Ginther, so I'm a project manager with Southern California Edison. And the projects that I manage are part of our wildfire mitigation programs. So the cover conductor that Mr. Thoburn spoke to, and some of the larger impacts in terms of switch replacements and pole replacements that you're going to see in this community are projects that I manage as part of this. To give you an idea of what these cover, last year with Edison, within our territory, we replaced 750 miles of conductor with covered conductor. Specifically in the San Joaquin region, we did 146 miles. Your community had about 15 miles of covered conductor replaced as part of that. Now, with the ongoing effort, we have quite a bit of work left. The entire system up here is going to be rebuilt when we're done. So everything from just south of Lake Cahuilla all the way up into the Sequoia Park will be essentially rebuilt, and covered conductor will be utilized. To give you an idea, there's approximately 70 miles worth of conductor left to be replaced on the 2 circuits that serve this community. So there's 2 circuits that come out of our substation that largely serve the Three Rivers community. Those being the Salt Creek and the Poly projects. So currently we're working with the Sequoia National Forest and the National Park for the pieces that go up into their territory. We've been working with local agencies here and giving some of the ideas. Some of the agencies that we deal with are the Caltrans, of course the Sequoia Forest and the Park. We deal with, of course, County Tulare, BLM, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, not to mention the environmental teams that we utilize to help clear some of these projects. This area is environmentally sensitive. There are lots of projects up here, of course, that deal with wildlife, waterways, and things of that nature. So until those get cleared, of course, our projects can't get built. So for part of what you're going to see is this design for these projects have been in flight for 3 to 4 years. And this is the culmination of all of that effort. So as this work is beginning to clear, we're now starting to get this into our project team hand. Last year was just the tip of the iceberg for this project work. Some of it was a late release. We looked at it as an opportunity to get some of this work out. Unfortunately, we didn't get communication out to the Three Rivers community to let them know that there's going to be impacts starting. This year, we're looking to accomplish 60 miles in the Three Rivers community. Now, it sounds like a pretty large impact, and it will be, but you've also got to keep in mind, we're going up North Fork, South Fork, we're going to be at the end of some of these lines that will not affect everyone on every outage. But the outage, they will be painful. We're going to work with, and Ron will speak to some of that as to how we're trying to mitigate some of that. But we're just letting you know that there's a tremendous amount of work we're looking to do this year. 2026, we're looking to wrap up with about 10 miles left. Now, depending on how some of these clearances go, permitting, those things can change a little bit. We may lose some 60, it may push into 26 a little bit, but really that's our focus right now. And one of the reasons is, obviously this is a high fire area. We're trying to mitigate that and remove us as a source of ignition, and this covered conductor helps us do that. And so once we're done, the system essentially is going to be more robust. It can handle incidental strikes and, of course, wildlife impact a lot better than it has, over the years. So this system has never been completely rebuilt since it was put in, starting maybe 100 years ago. I mean, this system is fairly old. We've added on to it over the years. There's been upgrades, but this is going to be a completely rebuilt system once we're done. So these next 2 years will be a little rough. However, when we're done with that, a lot of the poles that need to be replaced are part of this rebuild. We're putting a lot of maintenance efforts into these outages. So things that are already going to be normal work that we've been doing throughout the years, we're going to do as part of this project. So, Mama, so you had your...
Okay, well, you just answered part of it. But when you talk about covered conductors, you talk about the lines that go from pole to pole?
So we have examples here of bare wire and the covered wire.
So this is our bare and this is our covered. This is what we're installing. This will allow our system to be more resilient. Some of the issues you guys get impacted up here is when we do have storms come through. Just a simple branch laying across our lines like this will relay your circuits.
So how can we tell?
I apologize. They will relay our circuits. I'll trade you. It will relay our circuits up here. Having this installed, we could have that same branch land across this, and it will not relay our circuits. The construction that goes with this is a lot, it's a heavy-duty construction. The poles are bigger, everything is bigger, everything is stronger. So what we're gonna end up with in Three Rivers is, I won't call it a bulletproof system, but it's going to be significant in its resiliency. So
how can we tell what kind of conductor we have going up to where our power comes in? And what, I guess, how do we know where we are on the project database?
well, if you look up and you see shiny, it's this,
Okay.
right? And then the other thing you can really tell when this is installed in your area, because we put 15 miles up here in 2024. Whenever you see the poles, you will see a lot of gray cover. Because once this is installed, every time your wire dead ends or you have a transformer that we have to feed, there's connections. And part of this is not only the wire that's covered, it is all the connections coming down to the transformer. So when you look at a pole, there's quite a bit more stuff up there than you would normally see. Yes.
Can you please put in the nice brown poles and not the silver glaring shining poles? Then don't.
So transmission is the big poles, and those are the shiny metal poles. There's a reason why. That system has to be incredibly strong because that is the main feed that comes into Three Rivers. Those poles have a much longer lifespan than our traditional wood poles.
I'm not talking
So-
about wood.
No, I said that our traditional wood, those are the
Yeah.
steel poles. On distribution, that's what we feed your homes with. Those are generally wood poles, and now they're wood poles that are fire wrapped and or composite poles that are the fire wrap is built into them. They're brown. So
So if you
on the
have-
distribution side, you're gonna see brown.
So if you have a brown pole and it looks like it's wrapped with something, that's already been done?
Yes. You'll see almost like the black netting on the last 10 feet of the pole at the base. If fire comes up to that, that is meant to suppress that pole from catching on fire. And real quick, I think you had your hand back up there a while ago, did you?
I was gonna ask if the cover conductor was basically insulated wire in usual language, or basically yes or no.
So it's technically not insulated, it's covered, and we say that because it doesn't have necessarily a true voltage value, but it is insulated.
What do the woodpeckers do to it?
This, they don't like it, and you can touch it and see why, and we don't necessarily like working on it either because it is very
Better
hard.
than it looks.
Yes, yeah.
Because they do, they don't, the phone company has a problem with woodpeckers.
Yes. We don't with this. We do with our poles. So, composite poles, we don't have woodpecker problems with. I think the gentleman behind you had a question first.
So when you are sending in new lines, are you doing it not only in transmission, distribution, but to the house feed as well?
So this is not installed on our transmission lines. It is installed on our distribution lines. Our transmission lines, in general, are not a source, I'll say not an ignition source in general. If you look at the history of ignition sources, it comes from our distribution
So,
lines.
but now distribution, that's to your home.
Yes.
So now are you running new aerial to home?
No. So what this does is this is the main line that feeds the distribution line, which is 12 kV up here. From there it goes through our transformers, and the lines going to your home are already covered. Yes, sir.
What are you gonna do in the summertime when it's triple digits out? Are you guys gonna be shutting us off in 106 degrees for all day?
We have thresholds of when we can and can't do outages, and we live in the valley. It gets hot in the valley, and we have to continue to do work throughout the whole year. However, we have thresholds, so when we hit 105, we are limited when we can do our outages. They're generally limited to, I think it's 6 hours, and Jeff, you can help me out here, 6 hours, and we have to be done by 2 o'clock. If it exceeds the 113, or gets in between that 105 and 113, we're not doing outages. So we do take that into consideration. Three Rivers generally doesn't get as hot as the valley, but it does.
Do the battery backups help? Like, is
So-
a battery backup that you offer strong enough to power a AC?
So I cannot speak to that, that's not my area of
Okay.
expertise.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so along those lines, we do have a cooling center, it's the library, but it's not open every day. And so who can we talk to about making sure we have a cooling center that's available on those days when the library isn't open?
Yeah, that's something because the cooling center, those are usually contracts that we do. That's the library, and that's something that we've partnered with the county on. So that's something we can revisit with the supervisor, county staff, and our customer division that manages the cooling centers. So that's a good suggestion.
Thank you.
Since this is going to be impacting our community, even more than it has been for all of this year and part of next year, is there any way you could have a little website set up that would let us know in advance for a change what's coming, where you're gonna be working, what you're gonna be doing?
So we don't have a website for this, and there are some unique challenges to this area. Some of the agencies that we deal with do present some challenges. And some of the heartache last year, of course, was outage notifications go out. Hey, the day comes, my outage doesn't happen.
Yeah,
What's going on?
and then it happens and there's no notification.
So some of those cancellations were, of course, we had some weather impacts. So in other words, we had a project set up, helicopter set up, the fog was too great, they wouldn't let us shut the road down, the cancellation, basically, or the outage doesn't happen. And those days, it happened basically the day of. So the day we were supposed to go do it, our crews got shut down. In the incidence of the fires down south, we had crews working, we had outages set up, those crews get yanked, they get taken down to a natural disaster. Last year, we had the same issue with the hurricanes happening back east, with mutual aid, crews got pulled, they got sent back east. Some of the permitting agencies, I won't necessarily throw them under the bus, they do some shutdowns with some of the work that was happening in this area, there were some conflicts. We were told, you can't have your outage, we're doing our work that day. So some of those challenges we've already worked through. We're working now with these agencies to help lessen those impacts. Obviously the weather impacts we can't control. The issue is too, is if we say, well, we're gonna wait till conditions are perfect to do work up here, then we're never gonna get anything done. With environmental concerns, nesting birds going from February to August, issues with helicopter flight paths, we could spend a couple hours going through those challenges. Obviously what you're looking for is, hey, can we at least get notice? And so our outage notification system obviously is supposed to notify you in advance of that. And Ron will speak to some of the specifics in terms of the time frames as to what those look like, because there's really two types of outages we typically put out when they're planned. Obviously the unplanned, that's gonna be what it is. But that outage system will be in place. Right now, just because of the size and scope of this project, we don't have, let's say, a comprehensive schedule. We're gonna start here and we're gonna move all the way through. Some of the challenges are we're still working with environmental to get some clearances. We have some easements that we're actually working through with some of the community members. There's things that we're working on as part of this project, and doing 70 miles worth of work. You're gonna have challenges. If we waited until the entire project was ready to roll from start to finish, then that just delays the fire mitigation that we're not willing to essentially put off until it's fully ready. So that's part of how we're working through that, so.
Okay, so we understand why. Sometimes when you notify us that it's not gonna happen, could you notify us when it doesn't happen, that it's not gonna happen?
So that's a question we have with some of our outage communication folks. Unfortunately, couldn't be here as they were pulled off of this meeting to help with the fire that we have down south. They were supposed to be here, and as those fires have been going, we've been losing team members to some of that restoration effort. So that is something that we realize is a pain point. As a paying Edison customer myself, yes, I want to know when it's going to happen, when it's not. So we completely understand that, and that's something we're working through to try and get notifications, at least properly set up.
Because a lot of times when we know we can't work, we'll make plans to be out of town.
Right.
Go down the hill, whatever, and then we find out, because we're not sure when the work will actually finish, and then we come back and we find out there wasn't any work at all anyway. We could have
Right.
been home working all day.
Right, no, and we completely understand that. That was a major source of frustration for everyone within our company as well, because we know the impact it does have with the community. We have partnered with the agencies to try and lessen that. We're expecting this year to go much smoother. There's always going to be some bumps with construction in general, but we have started to lay that out to where we're going to have less impact in terms of the outages getting canceled at the last minute. That doesn't mean it won't happen. You know, and like you said, we can try to get the notifications out. The problem is if an outage gets canceled that day, there's no way to notify, unless, of course, we can work through and a text can be sent out, you know, to let you know. So that's something we're working through on our end to try and see if we can make that a little smoother.
Because a lot of us have businesses or home offices.
Right. No, completely understand.
Thank you. In regard to notifications, is there any way that we can also be notified of outages happening in the rest of the community? You guys have a map, but the map isn't very specific about the area in which the notification is taking place. And this is important because we have an important organization that needs to know when our elderly, for example,
Right.
Don't have power.
So there are some issues, and we've spoke to that internally with, if outages are kind of available to anybody within any community, we obviously like to think everyone has good intentions, but if they know an entire community doesn't have power, then people may come along that side of the community and know that while they don't have power, maybe security systems are down. So typically, that's not necessarily like published in terms of, we don't send out notifications to everybody in the community when a particular side of the circuit. Obviously, the affected individuals get those notifications through our system, but we don't notify the whole community as to how that's going to go.
Is there any way then that the organizations that serve the whole community would be able to get the notifications?
In terms of like, which organizations would be?
Well, yeah, you want to?
So I work with the aging in community. Some of our elders depend on electrical equipment. If there's a long power outage, some of them may need help starting up a generator or something in order to run life saving equipment.
Aging in community.
Currently, the map that we see during outages is so non-specific that we don't know where the power is on and off. It makes it hard for us to help others.
Understood. I don't know that that's something we can answer tonight, but we can definitely take note of that and take it to our team to see if there is something that we could do. And if, of course, there is specific addresses that we would know about, that might be helpful. I don't know if that's something we could even do. But I understand, obviously, with elderly folk and backup systems, sometimes there is some difficulty getting those up and running. So yeah, we completely understand. So that's something we'll take note of and see what we can do.
Quick question about this wire.
Sure.
That's obviously a lot lighter. How can you make the same length of runs with this as you can with the other?
No. So
How far can you go with it?
well, that all depends on the pole structure, the type of guy. There's a lot of engineering that goes into that. But our extreme long poles, we're going to be intersetting structures. So we're going to shorten some of the spans up to help maintain the heavier.
The reason I ask is because I live up on the south fork, the wires come through our house and across the river. And it's a long run over there.
Typically,
We're not going to be able to put a pole up in the middle there.
No, but typically what we do to handle spans like that is we're going to put in taller structures to handle the increased sag, and then we'll have to put in guying to help support some of that. So there's ways that we build around some of those longer spans. We have some extreme spans in other communities, Shaver being one of them, that present some unique challenges. I don't think we're going to have anything here that's going to be too long for what we're doing with this. But that's going to be why we're replacing these structures to the larger poles that Mr. Maurer referred to, the taller structures to handle the increased sag. So when the system's built, it's going to be a much more robust system. Not to say that it's not now, as the maintenance has been improved, say, the last 30 years with the company. Anybody that grew up in the Valley in the 80s understands that outages aren't what they used to be. So this is going to only make that better. It won't remove every aspect of it. Trees still come down. Things happen, but this is going to be a much more improved system overall.
I think it's really important that we as a community are more proactive in helping with some of these things. So we're talking about, we know we hit power outages. It used to be up here oh, here comes the rain, get ready for the power to be out, right? So make sure that you have portable chargers. Make sure your computers are charged, your cell phone's charged, you've got portable chargers ready to go. You've got, I work from home too, and so sometimes I have to use my hotspot, right, on my phone to be able to work. We need to be signed up for these alerts. And maybe there's a way to do that and work with aging in the community so that there's a phone tree. Somebody gets the alert, we start phone treeing or something like that. I know that the Fire Safe Council, maybe there's a way we can jump in and help with notifying people. But I think I think that we need to, as a community, be proactive and be your partner and help you, because you guys are doing your job and you're doing a great job and we appreciate it. We appreciate you making a safer community here. So I think that, as a community, we could come up with a way to partner with you better.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I used to live down the hill in the Merton Valley area until a few years ago, and one of the apps that was utilized there, of course, was the Nextdoor app for people that had needs in the community, because there was elderly people there that needed help with land work, plowing a field, hey, I've got a shed that's a problem, whatever. There was always people willing to either donate their time or nominal fee or, so there's a lot of community members helping each other out. So when you speak to that, I think absolutely that would be a great idea, especially if people get notifications, hey, I've got an outage notification, maybe I need help this day, can somebody come help? I think, obviously the community-driven part I think would be great.
That gentleman right there had his hand up a little while.
Which?
Sir? You had your hand up?
Oh,
Yeah.
are there any plans in the future to underground a lot of these wires? I know it's been discussed on the news and every place else about fires.
Right, so underground is always something that the company looks at. When the covered conductor system started getting implemented, it was a rapid response and we needed to get this implemented. One of the issues we run into with underground, specifically in this area, there's a number of challenges to underground the system. Yeah, so construction in general is one of them. Where's the line gonna go is one of the other issues. Getting the rights from particular landowners when we have to go onto those properties for that particular piece of equipment becomes another issue. The overall cost, time frame, for us to do a system like that and do the entire Three Rivers area would take a tremendous amount of time. To give you an example, and again, not throw agencies under the bus, dealing with a wonderful state agency, Caltrans in Kernville, I've got a 2-mile project that we're working on permitting now for the last year and a half. The project's been working with them for overall 5 years. We still don't have the underground system built. So obviously one of the areas we'd have to go here is right down the highway, most likely because of the granite and those things. It would be extremely difficult and expensive. That's not to say that in the future some of these things don't get looked at. This is the quickest way to get this built. It's nothing on our industry is cheap to do, but cost effective and quick are the things that we're looking at right now. And it's also effective for reducing the risk of ignition, especially when vegetation and wildlife come into play. So it's really the best system we're going to utilize up here at the time.
Leroy, has this system, these improvements been fire tested? As have these mitigation efforts helped, like in the LA fires? Have you?
So I can't speak to the LA fire specifically. We don't have enough information down there. Kernville, I have a little more information. When there's a fire in the area, it doesn't mean that the system still won't burn down. There was a fire here recently. Car went over the edge, started the fire, went over the hill. We did lose parts of our system. That's just the nature of fire. We can build it as robust, but we don't remove all of the fuel. That's a separate issue. We're trying to remove ourselves as a source of ignition. It is heat resistant with the poles. They can take a good amount of heat, but they're not fireproof. Nothing will be. This system being completely covered is going to be a more robust system. The one thing that we haven't experienced in this area that I know of is a public safety power shutoff. We typically don't see the conditions here for that. This actually increases that threshold even higher. So under the driest conditions, the heaviest of winds, the system can still stay energized until it reaches past a certain, because they basically raise that threshold. Now we don't have specifics. They have weather monitoring equipment up here. So they monitor humidity, they monitor temperature, wind speed, and everything at certain points around the system. If it hits that threshold, then they shut the system down. So this is going to just increase that even more and reduce the risk that a PSPS hits the community, which of course nobody wants to experience. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Mauer. I know he's got some points to.
If anybody has questions, before he starts, if anybody has questions, please wait for me to get you the microphone so that folks online can hear your questions too. Sorry about that, thank you.
So I wanted to address notifications. You should not have a planned outage and not be notified. You either should get a mailer in your mail. So the other thing I always tell people is make sure your address is current. We've had customers experience outages only to find out they have their main address somewhere else, or they've had it sent to their business. The other thing is you can sign up for text messages or emails, so make sure you're signed up for all of those. That we do have an app that is an outage map, but it may not be accurate, but what it does let you know is there's an outage occurring in your general area. And the people who are in that area should be getting notified. It should be a one-off that you're not notified. Our system tracks our customers, how it's fed off of our system. It comes to your house, that wire comes to your house, it goes to your meter. That is how we track you. It's not necessarily by your address, it's by your meter number. So if you're attached to our system, the only way you would not get notified if our system wasn't accurate for your specific transformer. So I like to call those one-offs. If that's happening, you can reach out and we can verify if that information on that transformer is accurate for you.
Okay, yeah, because I know for my neighborhood, probably about 40% we've not received notifications.
Okay, so what I might need to do is get with you and get that information from you, because that should not be the case. Because that stuff is updated. When we come out here and touch a structure, we are supposed to be looking at and updating that. And we have touched a lot of structures out in the Three Rivers area in the last 5 years. So it should be a one-off, not something that happens all the time. In regards to being notified when an outage is rescheduled or canceled, that is, I'll say, our Achilles heel. We will send out a notification. If you are signed up for text messages and email, you should be getting that cancellation notice. But it doesn't do you much good if we said it was starting today at 8 o'clock and we canceled at 9 o'clock. It's going to be delayed. I will tell you, it is not the easiest area to work in for us. There's a lot of regulations. We have environmental, right? We have nesting bird season that he talked about. We have certain windows, certain timeframes at other government agencies. So, and another thing that can impact us up here, and it actually did, I think, 2 or 3 times, was Bulletin 322. Didn't impact. So what that is, that's our high fire. So when we reach a certain threshold, we're getting ready to turn your power off for a planned outage that day. If we think we're going into that, we will not take that outage. And the reason being is, we cannot energize that circuit. Once 322 is put into effect, that's high fire alert. We cannot energize that circuit until we completely patrol it. For example, the circuit feeding this building, the Salt Creek, goes all the way into Sequoia Park. That could take us 24 hours to patrol. So in that case, you're going to be canceled right when you were expecting your outage to be started just for fire prevention. That is not the norm. I call that a one-off. But in summertime, I think we were impacted, was it twice? I know once for sure, if not twice.
It used to be a lot in the summertime.
Yeah.
In fact, one time we had a big old, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I heard this noise out in the yard. And there was this big Edison truck rolling across there, this spotlight up with the wires.
Yeah.
And where are you going? He said, well, I gotta check this line. I said, well, you're gonna run right in the river if you do that.
Yeah, it's holding a fire.
Someone online has said that they have tried multiple times to sign up to get alerts, and they don't receive the alerts. But you know what? I know who this person is, so actually I can answer that question. It's because we live in the trailer park, and the trailer park that has Edison lines from the trailer park, where we get the bill from the trailer park, you are not going to be able to get those alerts unless we change, because Mitch is the one that gets those alerts. Now, there are a few trailers in the trailer park that do have direct connection to Edison, and they'll be able to get the alerts. So the person that's asking, you're on the other system, and that's why you're not able to sign up and get the alerts. So maybe we take that up with Mitch or Tim and see if we can get that straightened out.
Thank you.
Also sign up for text alerts.
It's
The
master.
text alerts don't provide alerts to our address because it's listed under the owner of the trailer park's cell phone and his name and address.
It's master meter.
They're
so
not
it's
an
It's
one-
in Trailer Isle,
Yeah.
So when
yeah.
you sign up, you can't put in your cell phone number and it'll alert that cell phone number no matter what.
No,
No,
Nope.
we do it through our meter and through our,
no, it depends on who the owner is.
yeah.
So I have a question then for Eddie.
That's gonna get changed,
And I don't know if this is appropriate, but I'm gonna ask, is there any way to utilize Alert TC? When we have,
I would have to talk to the chief about that, only because, yeah, there are certain things that get elevated to the TC alert system
Right.
and other things that may not. So,
right,
but yeah, that's something that I could definitely talk to the chief about. And the OES for Tulare County.
okay, thanks.
Question, sir.
I have a question. You show a battery backup for emergency, you medical type stuff. Do you have something for water pumps? Because any of us who are on our own system, when the power goes out, we don't have water. So we have to get up early and take a shower in the morning.
Well, I can tell you, we just found that just yesterday. We didn't even know that program existed. Right, that's not what we do. You do. So, it just, for anybody who's, we had some emails that we went through, and one of them, gentleman was talking about how he's having to take care of his wife. And if you don't know, if you have a medical condition, you, a spouse, or someone living in your home, you need to apply for the medical baseline. There's a lot of benefits, including the generators that come with that. And then you are also specifically identified in our system, and you should be getting 100% guaranteed notification when your medical baseline.
I
It's
have
another
sleep
group that
apnea, so I
watches.
got one of these.
And are you pretty much consistently notified on all your outages, or has there been some you
I've
haven't?
only had a couple since I had it.
Okay.
That's fine, yeah.
Okay.
It's a good deal.
It's a very good deal. So anybody who has medical baseline, look into that, because it can keep your power.
In that trailer park though, that would be we're kind of SOL.
I hate to say it, because
Can they
you're
still
master
apply
meter.
to be able to get the generator so that at least they could have that backup, even though they may not get an alert?
The
Because
only
I know
thing
people
can-
in the trailer park that are on oxygen, and it was a problem when the power went out. Other people with sleep apnea.
I would say
as well.
take that information and make the call
Yeah.
to Edison. They would be able to answer that question.
And on that website too, that's where the generators are.
Yes.
There's some rebates for the generators.
Yeah, and if you're interested in a generator, just to purchase your own, if you go on that same website there, Edison gets discounts on generators for our customers too, so it's something to be aware of.
And that page is back there on the table.
Yes, ma'am. Thought I saw a hand. Any other questions for me? Yes, ma'am.
This is probably more a question for AT&T than SCE. One of the biggest dangers post-effects is when power goes out and the cell tower is affected. So that cell service goes down. The last time that happened, we know of one medical emergency, a very emergency, where they had no way to contact 911 to get help. Is there anything you guys can do with AT&T to ensure that the cell tower stays up?
So we notify them like we notify you. They're a customer. When we notify them, just as we have obligations to the public when we do outages to notify and provide certain services, so do they. And what I might suggest is get with your representative and get with the telecom providers in the area, because in 2021, people who live in high fire areas, they have a higher requirement and supposed to provide generation for their facilities or a temporary method to keep those lines of communication going. So that is their responsibility. It may be worth getting with the providers up here and having this meeting, and I can provide you the regulation So you'll have that and can talk to them about it. Because that, when we didn't even think about that, but you're absolutely right, no 911 service, no landlines. But we did research on our side, and they have responsibilities for people who live in high fire areas. Yes, ma'am, and you, sir.
Along the same lines, spectrum goes out when the power goes out. What we've noticed in some locations is that the power will go out and spectrum will go out in a larger area. And so I'm assuming you notify spectrum as well?
We do.
Okay.
We notify them, and what can happen with them, right, is if we take down one of their meters, right, it can feed a whole different area, different than us.
Right,
And
okay.
so they do get notified. Again, I don't know what their notification system is to their customers that are gonna be out.
Okay, all right. Yeah, because during the unplanned outage that we had in November, we had no phone service, we had no internet service, and no power, and no way to communicate with anybody in the community. So, yeah, anything that you all can do to help communicate with Spectrum and AT&T in that regard would be
They do get
very useful.
they do get notified unless it's unplanned. So another name for unplanned is emergent, right? Emergency, car hit pole, weather comes in, we have issues with animals in our system, which again, this covered conductor doesn't eliminate that, but drastic difference in providing reliability.
I'm gonna change the subject completely.
Okay.
About the tree pruning.
Oh, man, that's a perfect lead into the next subject. With that said, I will hand this off, and, but any more questions for us on construction or project management?
Thank you.
Thank you.
We got one here.
It already came up, but I just want to make you doubly aware that up here, almost everybody is on wells.
Yeah.
And very few of them are gravity fed. So if you put your tank up above your house, you can feed up to your tank and have gravity come down. Most of them run off of pressure tanks. So whatever's in that pressure tank, if you flush the toilet a few times, whatever, you're out of water. And so, and water is a need, not a want. So when you have 6 to 7 hour blackouts, it is a possibility to run out of water. And obviously water is a fire protection as well.
So again, the uniqueness of your area, right? I don't want to be insensitive, but that is why we notify you, and it gives you the opportunity to prepare. It's just uniqueness of the area you live in, so. Hope you're okay with
Generators
that.
and battery backup do run water pumps.
Yes.
Yeah.
I run mine all the time on my batteries.
Fill your
There's a power
bathtub.
on.
Fill your bathtub, you use water for your bathtub.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you, Ron and Leroy, and thank you to the gentleman for asking, setting us up with the tree pruning question, because that leads us our next part on the agenda, our vegetation management update with Joe Scaminacci and Nate Sandman from our veg management folks. So, Joe, Nate?
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian. All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Joe Scaminacci. I'm the Vegetation Operations Manager for the San Joaquin region. How's that? Is that better? All right. My name is Joe Scaminacci. I'm the Vegetation Management Operations Manager for the San Joaquin region. That includes Shaver Lake down to Kernville and everywhere in between. So, vegetation specifically, we've got several different programs that operate in your area. We have our routine compliance program, our hazard tree program, our structure brushing program, and our weed abatement program. These different programs have different scopes of work, and so we address these different scopes of work at different times of the year. Our routine compliance program, for example, focuses on trimming trees on an annual basis. So we want to get enough clearance to ensure our regulatory requirements are maintained for 1 full year. And that amount of clearance that we're going to obtain is dependent upon various conditions, environmental conditions, growth rate, species, etc. So we'll have inspectors come through for those routine compliance programs. They'll identify the work that needs to be trimmed, and then we'll have our tree contractors come through and complete the work. They also have to navigate through a number of different constraints, similar to my colleagues in our construction department, right? Whether that be environmental, associated with nesting birds, waterways, we have cultural sites, archaeological sites that we have to navigate that we don't want to disturb, and we want to ensure that we protect. And a lot of times, those resources can delay the completion of work. At times even, we have to return to the same location more than once because of those various resources. And we receive feedback that it's inconvenient, and we understand that it's inconvenient to have our resources and our contractors coming through multiple times in order to trim trees, to identify trees. So we can relate with that. And we want to ensure that the community understands some of those challenges that we're trying to navigate in order to protect those environmental resources that you all hold so dear, as do we. In terms of our routine compliance program, that's generally driven by regulation. So there's various regulations that require us to maintain certain clearances around our electrical infrastructure depending upon the voltage that that infrastructure carries, whether it be transmission, distribution, etc. And then all the way down to your service drops, right? So from pole to house, there's different clearances that we need to maintain. Our hazard tree program is more for trees that can fall into the lines. So our routine program focuses on trees that can grow into the lines. That's where we're trimming annually. Our hazard tree program focuses on trees that can fall into the lines, that are outside of grow into situations, but nonetheless could pose a hazard and cause an outage. That's dead and dying predominantly that we're focused on. Our inspectors that are performing our hazard tree inspections are certified arborists through the ISA, or the International Society of Arboriculture. And then we have our structure brushing program, which focuses on vegetation around certain types of infrastructure that has certain types of equipment on it. So we don't necessarily clear all of our poles or towers, it's just with certain types of equipment on it. However, we are looking to expand that program in the future to potentially include all towers and all poles. Again, all of the environmental challenges that I previously described also apply to these other various vegetation management programs that we have to navigate in order to get the work done, but without impacting those resources as minimally as possible. So, yeah, go ahead.
Who do we contact if, say, your contractors come through and they've trimmed away those branches and they just leave it there in a pile?
Yeah.
Who do we do we contact you or do we contact the contractor?
So it depends. If you have the contractor's contact info, please feel free to reach out to them directly.
Okay.
Sometimes customers may not have our contractor's contact information. Please feel free to reach out to us and we'll get a hold of them. We can determine what work was performed at your property, when it was performed, by whom, and that way we can hold them accountable for the work that they do.
Do you also want to know, so say we contact the contractor, but do you also want to know that that happened?
Certainly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to be, complaining all the time, but it's happened and I don't know who to contact.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. And we expect our contractors to haul all of the debris that we generate from the work that we perform. Unless property owners request wood be left for firewood purposes or whatever, that's your property and you're entitled to that. However, we will haul that wood away for fire prevention or anything else, as associated from a waste product of our activities. Ma'am?
Thank you. I have two questions. So one is in regard to contacting. As you may know, it's very difficult to contact SCE. You have a great phone tree, but the phone tree, as far as I know, doesn't address her question. So is there, you maybe won't have this answer, but right now, I don't think we would be able to contact SCE to tell them that there's a pile of debris that was left.
You could actually. So Nathan Sandman here, he's actually the local senior specialist for the Three Rivers area. He'll have his business card. He'll distribute his contact information this evening. And if you have any concerns associated with vegetation management activities, please feel free to reach out to him.
That's excellent. Thank you. Okay, so one other question. We have a lot of oak trees in our yards, and a lot of them are now growing around electric lines that are going from the poles directly to the house. And we have our fire crews coming along and telling us that we need to trim them, but the local licensed tree trimmers won't trim them because of the electrical lines. So what options do we have?
Yeah, absolutely. So we always discourage anyone from hiring their own private tree trimmers to work within 10 feet of energized infrastructure. So Edison will take care of any of that work at no cost to the property owner. All
Not
you
your
have
drop-
to do,
But not your drop to the house.
yes, sir. Yeah, including your service drop to your house. Yes. Yep. And so with those concerns that you may have, you can contact our 1-800 number. It's 1-800-655-4555. You can find that on Google as well. And all you have to do is call and report your concerns, your vegetation concerns, to the individual on the other side of the line. They'll take your contact information down, and we'll send out an inspector to assess and determine whether or not work is required.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Could you repeat that number?
Sure, it's 1-800-655-4555.
It's on the back of the brochure here.
And it'll be on my business card as well.
Yeah.
when I pass it.
Speaking of which, would you please just say your contact information, either your phone number or your email address, so it can get picked up for the people who are not here to
Sure.
get your card?
Sure.
Certainly.
Also, there was a question that came across online. We have a number of events that are going to be scheduled in the spring, a number of community events. And the question was, how soon in advance can we get the information of when there's a scheduled outage so that that event can potentially be rescheduled? And we need it as soon as advance as possible because a lot of our events start in like April, May, before it gets like super, super hot.
Brian, should be able to answer that question.
Yeah, if we can get a list of the community events, you can get that to us. My business cards are in the back on the table. Then we'll get that to Leroy and our folks and work with that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Ron.
I'm joining the Three Rivers crowd. I want to clarify something that's new to me. We did not used to trim to the service. That's changed?
Yes, sir.
Is it just in high fire areas or anywhere now?
Anyway, yeah,
Okay.
not hot fire as well.
Well, see, I learned something new today too. Because we're out there interacting with the customers all the time. So that way I can share with my team that's something we do now.
Yeah, and that was actually a question that we had submitted. And so there's a number of ways you can address that. So our inspectors go through on an annual basis and look for this work. Anything from the service drop all the way to our primary infrastructure. However, if you can also report it if you have any concerns, and if you have a tree trimmer that you would like to complete the work, we can send out a troubleman. They'll de-energize and disconnect your service drop. Your individual tree trimmers can perform the work if you don't want our contractors to do it, and then we'll go ahead and reconnect it back to your home. That's a worst case scenario. We want to encourage property owners to allow us, our qualified individuals, to perform the work, but we also understand too that you have the autonomy to hire somebody that you would like if you want to incur that expense, and we'll send someone out to disconnect that service line. Yes, Liz?
Things have improved with the contractors in that they used to, we'd hear noise and we'd go out and they'd be cutting stuff down. So now they're much better about coming and telling us they're coming on the property because we want to go out and see where they're planning to work. We have irrigation systems. We have some art in our property. We want to tell them where things are. We want them to stay on the paths and not trample over the plantings. And they tell us for sure they will clean up, but often it takes me 2 or 3 days of work after they leave. They don't seem to have rakes or anything. They'll pull out big branches and then, they'll leave a big trail and they don't come back and pick up all the other stuff that's lying around. And sometimes they seem to not notice. I mean, pretty large stuff. I think they make one pass and then they just leave. So if we can call and tell you, that would be very helpful. Also, it's very confusing to us because it seems as if the communication among the contractors is very poor. So, for example, this fall they came out and they taped a bunch of trees and nobody ever came back. So I thought, I don't want to keep looking at all this plastic stuff. So finally, after a few months, I started taking some of the plastic off. Lo and behold, a couple weeks after I started doing that, these guys show up and say, well, we're here now to trim the trees. So other times the inspector will come and will mark things, and then when the crew comes, they say, oh, well, that's not on our work order. Or they'll climb a tree, and I'll say, wait a minute, that's not the big branch or trunk that's marked. Oh, well, when we climb up here, we can see things differently, and we see what we need to do. So one time, a couple of years ago, one of the inspectors came, and he wanted to walk the whole thing with me, and we marked some other trees. He marked everything, and when the crew came a few weeks later, they said, oh, those aren't on our work order. So it's very frustrating for a homeowner who's trying, who lives here because we love the environment, we love the trees, we love the animals. The trees are so important for habitat and for cooling and for cleaning the air. The trees are so important to us. And when we can't work something out, we had a big surprise just a couple of weeks ago when somebody came from Edison and wanted us to come out to this power pole. He said, we need to take some trees out around the power pole. I said, what power pole? So we went out to the pole, because we have two, and this has never happened before. He said, well, we now need to take down every tree within 10 feet of the power pole. And nobody had ever told us that before. And so he said, and when we do that, you've got this tree over here, and its branches, some of its branches would get into that 10-foot, the edge of the 10-foot perimeter, so they would take that tree too. And we said, well, what if you just took these to start, and then we see if that gives you enough clearance? Is this a new program? They've been coming for years.
Yeah, that's a part of our expanded structure brushing program that I had described. So the clearances that we are obtaining around our poles with certain types of equipment has expanded. Yeah, and to your point, we are looking to clear a 10-foot radius around those poles, and then also a cylinder up that pole.
And it would be very helpful if we knew ahead of time that that was going to happen. I guess if we hadn't been there, they would have just started cutting down all the trees.
Yeah, and so I believe I was speaking, I'm sorry ma'am, I didn't catch your name earlier. So our contractors are required to attempt to notify property owners before accessing any property. We have an example of some door hangers on the table up there that you should be receiving either on your door, on a locked gate, prior to their entry. And so that is our attempt to inform property owners of the work that needs to be performed prior to performing it.
That often doesn't happen. Somebody just shows up.
Yeah, and we would like to hear about those situations too.
Okay.
Because we want to hold our contractors accountable to the expectations that we have of them. And if our contractors aren't making those reasonable attempts to notify property owners before the work is performed, then we want to address that with them.
So we were so surprised, and we said, well, what if you take these 4 trees? And he said, no, it's all or nothing. So you can either refuse, and then we'll say, okay, they refused. But you just shock people with something we've never heard of in all these years.
Yeah, it really has to do with our wildfire mitigation plan and our expanded clearances that we're trying to obtain in order to harden the system. Yeah, yeah.
Is there anything, so I'm assuming with all of this is just my personal assumption, with all of the wildfires happening in Southern California now, we've got the one in Cascade that's burning 30 acres a minute, that building regulations are going to change, regulations for you guys are going to change. Is there a way that you publish what your regulations are? Is there a way for us to go to a website and say, oh, okay, that's why they said this, because now this is a new regulation that SCE has to deal with?
Yeah, all those regulations are published through the CPUC and other regulatory agencies. General Order 95, Rule 35 is one of them that dictates the amount of clearances we need to get around different voltages. Public Resource Code 4292 and 4293 are similar regulations that we're abiding by in order to maintain wildfire mitigation efforts.
And is it possible that that 10 feet could expand after what's going on down there?
You know, it's hard for me to speak to what's going on in terms of discussions at the state level within the CPUC and potential changes in regulatory clearances. Yeah. But, you know, it's our job to make sure that we're maintaining those clearances at all times in order to prevent any ignitions from vegetation.
And we appreciate that.
Is there any way you can talk your tree pruners into doing anything besides just butchering the trees? I mean, they come out and they just cut the top off of it, you know, and it looks terrible, you know. Of course, eventually it grows out, and then they come back and cut the top off of it again. It seems to me like they could do a little better job of pruning the trees, you might say, or at least make them look decent, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that we continue to work with our contractors on. Our expectations are our contractors prune to ANSI standards. So that's the American National Standards Institute. They come up with the ways in which trees should be pruned in order to maintain their health and structural integrity. So our expectation is that our contractors prune to those standards. If they cannot, though, the option generally is then we recommend removal because we have right tree, right place. Right? And we have a lot of trees that have growth characteristics underneath or around our electrical infrastructure that are not compatible with overhead energized lines. And so we don't want to cut the side of a tree, right, and make it look lopsided or you know, grow in a way that isn't natural or wouldn't have otherwise. But at the same time, we can't make those determinations to remove a tree if it's on private property. We need private property owners' permission to remove a tree down to the ground. So all we can do is trim that tree to maintain those regulatory compliance clearance distances. If the property owner approves removal, we will remove that tree at no expense to you.
It would be really helpful if we knew these things ahead of time.
Well, hopefully this community meeting is helping to inform the community about...
This is very helpful.
Wonderful, I'm glad to hear that.
We've been in the dark for a long time.
Well, hopefully we can change that.
If you do happen to have a tree that got butchered, can you call and say, how do I fix this? So I mean, they topped my pecan tree this year, and it's like, I understand why you topped my pecan tree. But, you know, now can I go in then and have my arborist come and reconfigure that tree so it's a little prettier?
Absolutely, as long as it's outside of that 10 foot. Yeah, we don't want anyone that isn't line clearance certified to work within 10 feet of energized infrastructure. Unfortunately, there's third-party contacts that occur every year that result in fatalities, and that's why we do what we do, in order to prevent those from occurring.
Is that something that maybe she should take a picture of and then share with you so that you can address whoever that was that came out there?
Yeah, we can certainly consider it.
And then that way, whoever it was that came out there, if they didn't cut it to their standards, then they know about it, and maybe you don't have to pay the expense of having it, you know, done the way it should have been done.
Yeah, I will say though, at times we get requests to balance trees and trim trees that aren't associated or interfering with energized infrastructure, and that isn't a part of what we do. We clear the trees, we don't necessarily trim the trees. And so that would be the responsibility of the property owner.
Sometimes it's very difficult to communicate with the tree people because of language barrier.
Yes.
Yeah, we do have an expectation that at least one individual on every crew can speak English.
Sometimes that person comes to the door and says, we're going to be starting work, and you walk the line with them, and then that person isn't there the rest of the day.
If you have communication challenges, please feel free to escalate those to Nathaniel, and he'll be able to address those concerns.
It is actually written into the contract that one person on every crew needs to be fluent in English, and so that's something that we can hold them accountable for.
The whole time the crew is on the property.
You know, every situation is a little different. We have customers that request that. We have customers that request that I'm on site the whole time. We try to do what we can to be respectful of private property owners. That being said, every situation is a little different. Sometimes if it's just one tree that only needs a little bit of work, those folks who are bilingual will work ahead of the crew and go, to the neighbor's house or something.
How often is the, it's a question online, how often is the website updated when you guys are gonna do this sort of stuff? And for the folks, it's another question for the same person that lives in the trailer park where we can't get the alerts. Is the website updated, like will it post? If you send out an alert, can somebody go to the website and see those alerts?
So for vegetation management specifically, the notification occurs in person. It's a two-step process. So the inspection team generally works about 2 months ahead of when the tree crews will arrive. So the first point of contact should be an inspector that either leaves a door hanger or knocks on the door, or for the folks who have shared their phone numbers, they may get a voicemail. That's the first notification. And then if for some reason, maybe folks have a summer home, they're not here during certain months, another attempt will be made 2 months later by the tree crew. We have what's called a customer coordinator, whose whole job is to reach out to property owners. And they'll use similar tools, door hanger, voicemail. So my best advice for folks is, please, let's make sure we have your up-to-date contact info. And you can feel free to email me or call me or text me. That helps us out so much when we have an accurate phone number. Yes, ma'am.
Also, the crew that came most recently, without asking us or notifying us of their intention, drove their big truck and their big chipper shredder right out into our meadow where the new grass is just trying to come up. And we hear all this noise from the chipper shredder that sounds awfully close. And they knew, well, shouldn't they not go off the driveway or the roadway?
That's correct. They should be seeking permission to bring heavy equipment.
And the ground was damp, and so there's big ruts through the meadow. And
so it sounds like maybe we should chat afterwards and make sure that we have each other's info. I really do want to try to improve that situation for you.
Thank you.
So I'm just curious if your process is the same. I work in wildfire prevention with an organization in Napa, and we do a lot of what you're doing. We send out an RFP, the vendors come back, we choose the vendor, and a lot of what's in that RFP and what the vendor agreed to is up at a higher level, right? And sometimes that information doesn't trickle down to the crew on the ground. It's not always the case, but it does. And that's why sometimes when that crew gets there, there's been that break in communication, and they might not do things the way they should do them. So maybe the RFP says, or the contract says, we're going to trim trees this far back from the lines, its branches 8 inches in diameter, and we're going to not just simply top a tree or whatever. But those guidelines don't always get down to the crew. We try really hard, but that doesn't, and doing the project management I'm doing, I imagine is similar to what you're doing. And so we can only go back and try to fix it after the fact. But just know that there's a lot of decisions that this is kind of educational. There's a lot of decisions made at a higher level that sometimes don't get trickled down all the way down to the boots on the ground. And then the boots on the ground are really, really working hard to do their job. And it's like any other organization. You have how many vendors, right, do you have?
We have 16 within vegetation management specifically.
Right, and so then they have how many crews, and how we get all that information. And then if there is some language barrier, maybe things are misunderstood. So I think that, I know somebody who works at SCE that's been up here who said some things to me today about Three Rivers, and it was embarrassing. He said, because people have been really awful to the SCE crews that are coming up to do things and to the contractors. And so I said, I don't think that's the norm, but there are people that are going to be cranky about it. So I apologize on behalf of Three Rivers, but if we can, again, partner and try to figure out and try to understand what that process is, I guess is what I'm saying, is because I deal with those same kind of phone calls and those same kind of things from homeowners, and I know how difficult that is. And so if we try to understand on our end and be more proactive, that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you for that. And quickly, let me just address one of the points you brought up about the message or the contractual language not making it all the way down to the crew level. We do morning tailboards pretty regularly with our contractors, where me personally, my teammates will go to their yard in the morning. We have a translator, and we go over specific points, usually relating to feedback that we're getting from property owners and stuff like that. And we really try to hone in on that and make sure that the message is getting to every single member of our team.
And we do that too, and you're trying, but somewhere something falls, or, it happens, is all I'm saying, is it happens, and we can try our best to do everything we can to prevent it from happening, but.
And just to add to Nate as well, we also have a QC department that goes out and inspects the work that our contractors perform. They're a separate third-party contractor, and that way we help to ensure that they're fulfilling their contractual obligations, not leaving any trees missed, and doing what they've committed and obligated to.
It's really good to have a two-way street.
So regarding when you guys as tree inspectors and contractors go out, are they marked or identified badge-wise, anything like that? Because I have gotten plenty of calls to where, hey, this guy's on my property, he doesn't look familiar. So I just want to make sure that you guys relay or set that up to where they are easily identifiable for everybody here for my sake, because I'm the one taking care of all of them, making sure they're safe. And I would like if you guys can relay that.
Absolutely. Yeah, great question. So we expect of our contractors that they have badges issued by their employer that states who they are, who they work for. But in addition to that, Edison provides a document to each approved contractor that states they're an approved contractor, who they are, and a number that a concerned party can contact, whether it be law enforcement, private property owner, that you can call and verify that that contractor is an approved contractor to work for somebody.
Because after this last incident, we asked the gentleman, do you have a car? And he said no. So we didn't have any way to identify him specifically.
Yeah, and we encourage property owners, if they don't present any type of verification, to not let them on your property, to not let them perform work. We have folks who are impersonating Edison contractors, firefighters, police officers down on the Eaton fire, on the Palisades fire, and if you see something, say something. So if you're unsure about the qualifications of an individual who is suggesting they're somebody they may not be, don't proceed. Definitely exercise a degree of caution and safety around that. Nate, did you have anything else you'd like to share?
Any questions for me? I think you did a great job of giving a rundown of the programs we have in this area. Yes, ma'am.
Just a reminder for you to give out your information for the people online. And what if you haven't gotten advance notice, somebody shows up and you're not home to say yes or no? Are they going to just cut away?
They should not be, no. As I mentioned, so it is a two-step process where you should be getting notified first by the inspector. So they don't do any cutting themselves. And then when the tree crew shows up, they are obligated to attempt to notify. So there could be some situations where they tried to call, they left the door hanger, they're not getting any response. And in that situation, if the tree is easily accessible from the road, they may go ahead and trim after they've made their attempts. If it's in the backyard or it's somewhere where they need to enter your property, they should not be entering without speaking to somebody.
So question online is, why isn't a signature required by the individual coming to the property? Because if they just come out there and start whacking at trees, that's irreversible.
So a signed form is required for tree removals, not for pruning. And one of the big reasons for that is we are obligated to maintain compliance with state and federal regulations. So we do need to keep the lines clear for public safety, even if we're unable to get in contact with someone or get their signed permission. And for the folks joining us virtually, again, my name is Nathan Sandman. I'm a senior specialist with Edison Vegetation Management, certified arborist, and my direct cell work number is area code 559-580-3072, and my email is nate.sandman@sce.com. And I have plenty of business cards for anyone that would like one. And it also has the 800 number on the back if anyone has a trouble that they want to report.
Also, I'm going to go ahead and scan the documents that have been provided, and I'll put those in a folder on Three Rivers Helps Its Own. I'll put those in a folder on Three Rivers Rants and Raves, so information will be accessible there.
Boy, are we glad to see you.
Lastly, we do have a brochure back there for Right Tree, Right Place. So if anyone is interested in the types of tree species that Edison encourages property owners to plant around the lines, they'll be on that list. They have growth characteristics that won't require us to ever come on your property and trim those trees. Yep.
How do you do that?
Sorry?
Let the tree continue to grow?
Yeah, they just won't grow so tall to interfere with the lines. Mm-hmm.
Certain varieties.
Right,
Like,
right.
just the tumbleweed down there. Look out.
One other thing I did want to mention in relation to covered conductor. So while covered conductor is more resilient, strain abrasion resistant, all of the benefits that Leroy and Ron described, it does not unfortunately permit us to get less vegetation clearances. So despite it being more robust, we still have to maintain the same regulatory clearances around those lines depending upon the voltage that those lines are carrying.
If can a homeowner pay for undergrounding on their property? Can you do that?
Right.
Ron Leroy.
Can you pay for what?
Pay for undergrounding.
Oh, I'm
The
curious.
question is, yeah, can you pay to have the lines buried underground? Can you?
Yes,
I'm sure you can.
Edison being in business definitely will, if you're gonna pay the underground lines on your property, that is something you can do. Obviously, depending on what the voltages are, the transmission line is not one that would be underground, just because of the cost and nature of that voltage. But the distribution could, or even your service could be underground. So those are things that you could always see. And I think, Brian, Mr. Thorburn, did you bring the contact information for our local planning department?
Yes.
So our local planning department contact information is available, and if that's something that you're interested in, you can contact them for that.
Because when you look at the cost for you guys to come out and crew after crew.
Hold on, don't talk until I get you the mic.
Sorry,
That's okay.
It must be very expensive for these crews to come out, and multiple crews and multiple inspectors, and year after year after year after year. But we have magnificent oak trees on our property that are probably well over 100 years old. And they, I suppose, in their 100-year history, we've only been there for 35 years, but have probably seen fire. And they've survived, but there weren't power lines there then. So we were wondering whether it would be more cost effective for Edison to underground it than to keep having these crews to come over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, so what we are doing is we're trying to consolidate our activities in order to avoid having multiple contractors to come to property owners' locations multiple times. However, because of the nature of the work and the frequency in which inspections need to occur, depending upon the program we're talking about, that's not always possible. But we are trying to consolidate that as much as possible.
Oh, so it's different inspectors, one guy's for brush, one guy's for pruning, one guy's for tree removal, it's all different?
So it's more program specific. For example, our hazard tree program inspections occur on a 3-year basis, 3 to 5 year basis, depending upon the risk categorization of the area, of the lines, etc. Our routine inspections occur on an annual basis. Same with structure brushing. So our contractors have certain qualifications, certain equipment that they've acquired to complete the jobs that they've been hired to do. So what we're trying to do is encourage contractors to broaden their scope of work and willingness to complete different scopes of work, but that isn't always the case. Some contractors are only interested in certain types of work.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe and Nate. And taking us home tonight is our colleague Dan Kellerline, who's going to provide an update on Kauai Powerhouse. Dan?
Thank you. I don't want to get into the refreshments after this, so I'm trying to be brief. And I can tell you one thing, that after hanging out with some of the distribution folks and the veg folks this evening, I'm pretty thankful for my career path, which is in the generation side of Edison. So I'll give you kind of a brief update on that. So I'm Dan Caroline. I'm the senior manager for the Southwest production area, which includes the powerhouses in Kauai, Thule, some in Kernville area. We have some solar yards down in the Porterville area. We are currently building a battery storage site in the Springville area. And then also on the other side of the Sierras, I have the Bishop Mono Basin area, which is kind of a mixed bag too of hydro and also some battery storage. So spread out a little bit. Have kind of skeleton crews to do, a lot of work that we're working on these historic projects that are in this area that are 100 plus years old. So the status of the projects on the Kauai drainage here, we have a couple of them that are out of service due to fire damage and rock slide damage. The one that's in service, it's fairly old unit. Also has it's restricted right now on what we can actually generate with it. So we're pretty bare bones, on what we can supply as far as power to the system right now out of this area. One of the things I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about is we have an operating license with FERC, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So almost all generating facilities need to have a license, and it tells you what you're allowed to do, how you can do it, when you can do it, as far as fish release flows, all sorts of things like that. So back in 2019, we started the process of reapplying for our operating license. It's a very long process, so we still don't have a license yet. It's in FERC's hands as we stand now. For them to review it, we had public meetings like this during that time frame, so I don't know if anybody participated in that. We take all of the public input, forest input, national park input, and develop a new operating license. And then we take that to the FERC, they review it, they may make some modifications to it, then they issue that to us, and they're usually 30 to 40 year license. So it's a pretty good deal when you can go through all the work for 5-6 years, and then you get a license that lasts you 40 years. So still waiting on that license. So we'll hopefully get some updates on that soon. There's a website that I think all you need to do is search Southern California Edison Cahuilla project relicensing, and it'll take you to a spot. And then on that website, there's a ton of contacts to mine included that you can reach out to if you have any questions. Pretty interesting part of this is we're also going through a divestment process right now with these 3 projects, which means basically selling part of your business. So Edison has decided that the Cahuilla projects aren't something that they want to keep in their generating portfolio any longer. So we basically put them up for sale. It's not like calling a realtor and driving a sign and going through that selling your house type of a process. It's more of looking for people that are capable of operating and maintaining the facilities as we would and following our license as they do it. So we kind of put that out to bid, found a few people that were interested in buying the projects. We walked them through all the projects, they looked them up and down, they kind of made a decision on whether or not they thought that they would be interested in buying the projects from us, taking over the license. Then we looked at them and made a decision on if we thought that we would want them to continue to operate the projects that were built so long ago. And we picked one in particular that has bought projects throughout kind of the the West Coast, from kind of Colorado coming west, and we entered into an exclusive negotiation with that one operator, and then there's a big process that goes on with that where you have to go ahead.
What does that mean from our point of view? I mean, when you're talking about a project, are you talking about the facility that's out on Cahuilla River Drive?
Yes.
And if somebody else takes that over, what does that do to us?
So that's a great question. It really doesn't change anything. If this IPP, so we call them, it's an independent power producer, if they are successful in checking all the boxes through FERC, through the CPUC, through us, they have to show financial assurance that they're capable of maintaining these projects and operating them. If all those boxes are checked, then they operate the project under the same license that we operated under. So really, nothing should change on how the projects are operated.
But does that mean that we would no longer be dealing with SCE?
Correct.
So all of the information that we just heard is out the window?
No. Thankfully, I'm only on the generation side. So all the guys that spoke before me, they distribute that power that we make. So my side of the company makes the electricity, and then we send it out, and then all these guys, distribute it and maintain all those lines.
But those people would be dependent on this new company providing the same level of power and the same level of service that you are doing in-house.
Not necessarily, because it goes into the grid. So the projects that are here, the hydro projects that we have here, are very small. Even if we had all of them up and running, I don't think they produce enough electricity to power all the homes in the area. Most of the power comes from outside of this area to supply the homes. So I don't think you would see any kind of change in the level of service that you have at your house.
Edison would still provide the transmission lines.
Correct. Yeah. We're only the generation side is what we're working on divesting. So the time frame on this, we've already been working on this for about 3 or 4 years. It goes into goes, like I said, it goes to the CPC, goes to FERC, checks all these boxes. I would estimate at this point we're about 80% complete on this process. So that means we probably have 12 to 24 months more to go. if you guys are familiar with the Thule side, the Thule drainage, like in Springville area, we have a project there. We've been running in parallel with that project. It's a lot less complex than the projects here because we have, one of the projects, Kuya 3, is in the National Park. So we have a special use permit with the National Park Service that it literally takes an act of Congress to make any changes to that. So we've already, we have folks in DC that are working, to get it on assembly bills and make some changes to that. So we're working pretty closely with the park. They're very receptive to what we, want to do. They like to have the projects in the area. So I'm fairly confident that we'll get something accomplished, but it's going to be a while. Go ahead.
So does the project include the dams up in Mineral, I'm sorry. So do these projects include the dams up in Mineral King?
Yeah, so the dams in the Mineral King are part of the special use permit. So yes, they do. We're looking at various options for this because they really don't hold a lot of value for generation. So I don't know if the potential new owner would be interested in keeping those active. So
Okay. And then another member of the community asked about Edison Road. Evidently there's a sign indicating that it's going to be closed.
I do not have any information on that. No.
Okay.
Any other questions? You want me to bring any of these other guys up for more questions?
Cookies, give us cookies.
Yeah, have some cookies. Thank you, Brian.
Well, thank you, Dan. Yeah, because we don't want to stand between you and cookies and water and all that. But we again want to thank all of you for your engagement tonight, your participation, and for those folks online, we appreciate your participation as well. I do want to give a shout out to the Fire Safe Council because we've been proud supporters of that organization for a long time, and now more than ever, it's a vital source of support here in the community and a great partner for us at SCE. So on behalf of Southern California Edison, we thank you, our customers. We appreciate your continued patience and support, and we hope you found tonight informative. And I'd like to thank our host, Supervisor Valero, and if you want to close us out, sir, the mic back to you. Thank you all again.
Thank you.
Well, good evening again, and just want to share, thank you so much for being here, and as Brian said, your engagement throughout this whole evening was great, and knowing that, yes, SCE is here to be a partner and to be supportive and to, again, keep us moving in the right direction for fire mitigation as well as other issues that are present. As you and I've mentioned before at the beginning, we have serious issues going on around the state with regards to our fires, and so this is preventative measures for us to be safe, sound, and secure. So again, want to thank you all for being here, and stay around if you have any additional questions or comments or more information in the back. Feel free to do that as well. Again, thank you everyone and have a great night.
And Eddie, thank you. You